Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, the South African Weather Service has issued a level 6 orange warning for severe thunderstorms in several parts of KZN. Heavy rain and a tornado swept through several areas, causing widespread damage, particularly yesterday. Now, eNCA's senior reporter Dasen Thathiah is on the story and he joins us now live from the sky. Dasen, just tell us what you're seeing there.
Maseko, you'll remember that we were out here yesterday just shortly after that tornado hit. So now we are getting a better perspective of exactly what kind of damage it caused in the area. You should be seeing some of it now. Many of the structures in this area of eNCA have been affected. Lots of them have lost their roofs. There's debris all over underneath or below where we're flying now. We're actually tracing the path of where that tornado struck yesterday. Many of the residents on the ground having expressed that they hadn't seen anything like that before, and as a result of it, many of them left homeless or in a situation where their homes have been badly damaged and they aren't in a position to occupy them. The official reports that came out of this area were that 2 people were injured, presumably by the debris that was flying around. You should be getting a sense of what it looks like now. Lots of pieces of metal around on the ground below us. Light poles had fallen over. I recall yesterday when we were driving through here how the light poles had almost obstructed some of the roads, making it extremely dangerous to drive through. That was something that also hindered the access for paramedics and emergency response teams that were in the area. So one of the immediate things that they had to do was to clear a path so that they could get across. You would know that with the live power lines running across the road, that's certainly not an area that is safe to work in. Here below us now, I think this is where most of the damage is concentrated in this area. You can almost see how it has spread in the direction in which we're flying now. Closer towards an intersection, this was the initial area in which those response teams had arrived yesterday. Even now, as we fly above, there's lots of work that's being done on the ground, primarily to clear the pathways, to make sure that the area is safe. We also see some teams that have been working on the light poles, trying to get them off the roads and to erect them. But yesterday, towards the evening, the municipality had also told us that they were in the process of making those necessary arrangements, trying to get people out of here, to get them to drier areas, to ensure that they had a place to stay last night. So fortunately, I think there seems to have been a faster response yesterday from what we could see, but we are still awaiting the official figures in terms of how many people were displaced in this area.
And I mean, that's also going to prove to be quite interesting, Dasen, especially after what happened last year in April, because that would add the number of people that government needs to house urgently.
That's right. I mean, as much as more than a year has passed, Maseko, it's now common knowledge that the city is not where it was before those floods. There's still lots of work to be done. There were many roads that were still damaged. As recently as 2 weeks ago, we were in an area where there was still damage to the road as a result of last year's floods. So it's a city that's still grappling with that, and certainly a province as well. So this doesn't come at a time when we can afford to have this type of inclement weather. But despite that, there are now these types of measures that are being taken to accommodate these people that have been displaced. While I'm talking to you now, Maseko, we are heading in the direction of Zwelisha, which is not far away from where I am. That's where there was a search that was being conducted because there was a man that was reported missing in that area. It's believed that he was a herdsman that was working there, and he was crossing a river at the time of the flooding, which also we saw quite it was quite bad yesterday afternoon. The rain continued throughout the evening, and he has been missing since. So search teams had gone out there. They tried to work in that area this morning. Yesterday there was a response as well, but up until this point, that search has continued. you'll see that some of the damage continues in the direction in which we're flying now. I think you're also getting a sense of the water levels and how close some of these homes are to where the water is. So that's been an added concern, not just this time around, but whenever we see heavy rains in the area, there is always that concern for those who live very close to the water. Even here, just below me now, you'll see that there's a bridge where community members have to cross. Another massive problem in KwaZulu-Natal, where you have communities that need to get from one side of a river or water body to the other side, and that puts them at added risk, because in many cases they either need to access services or they need to get back to their homes, and they need to cross over these areas, which become extremely dangerous during wet weather conditions like what we are seeing at the moment.
And in terms of warnings, Dasen, I mean, you might have seen a lot of people on social media, just expressing worry for KZN, because it looks like every year something happens in that province in terms of natural disasters. Just tell us a bit more about the Weather Service, their warnings. What are they advising people to do?
We have seen warnings that have been issued not only by the Weather Service, local government, as well as provincial government, and also issued warnings about the heavy rain. In fact, I think it's once bitten, twice shy, really, because one of the criticisms the last time around during the 2022 floods was that there were possibly not many warnings, or not enough of those warnings to talk about the severity of the weather conditions at the time. So we've seen that since then there have been a number of alerts that have been issued, especially when heavy rains are expected. There are warnings to motorists, there are warnings to communities to remain indoors during this time to ensure that they are not exposed. But you know that, for example, yesterday there were people that were already out. They would have been at work, they would have been returning home, and at that time they would have been caught up in this bad weather. So the same thing happened yesterday. We did see those warnings, but when we were out on the ground, we also saw people then struggling, trying to get through, trying to get back to their places. We saw women carrying babies on their backs, struggling with umbrellas, trying to walk home, trying to get home to hopefully get to their houses, which they were able to then stay in last night. But in many cases, people were not. Even here now, as we fly through Maseko, I think you'll be able to see what that heavy rain did to these communities that are extremely close to the water's edge.
Dasen, tell me about cleanup operations. I mean, yesterday with the picture that you were showing us, there was even corrugated iron from people's shacks, their homes, having flown all the way up to the Apollo lights, for instance, etc. Has that been cleared? Are they trying to clear, some of the debris from what was damaged yesterday?
The immediate concern now is to do a few things. One of them is to do that, exactly that, to try and make the area as safe as possible. And I can confirm that there have been teams that we've seen that are starting to do that kind of work. There's also the issue of search and rescue, because that is still a concern right now. There are missing people that we know of. Unfortunately, we don't have official numbers yet, but there are people that are missing. So that process is also happening as we speak. There are certain areas around Durban, for example, I mentioned Zwelisha, there's also the Cato Crest informal settlement. I will be taking you and our viewers there in a short while to show you what that looks like. That's where an active search is currently taking place. So there are lots of considerations. There's also the humanitarian needs. We know organizations like the Gift of the Givers are on the ground. They're trying to assist where possible, provide food hampers, blankets, and those types of things. So a lot is happening, but it is still very early stages when you look at the fact that it's not even 24 hours yet. One of the concerns that we've noticed whenever there's this kind of situation that arises is the issue of communication and getting those messages out to authorities and these agencies that need to help. So it needs to be done in a very coordinated way, and sometimes it's not. So normally it would need to be communicated at a local level first, and then that is further communicated to these agencies when they arrive from a central point. So right now, we find ourselves in a position where that information is still being collated, and it's only after those assessments are complete that you could really get a full sense of exactly what the extent of the needs are, and also, sadly, what is the extent of the toll on human life here. How many people are really injured, how many people are missing, and how many people may have passed away. I can tell you now, just from my sources on the ground, Maseko, there have already been several deaths that have been reported. There are body recoveries that bodies that will have to be recovered by these search teams. But when we get closer to these sites, I think we'll be able to get more of a sense of exactly how severe it is.
Well, Dasen Thathiah, our senior reporter, live for us from the skies. He's giving us a bird's eye view of the damage that was caused by the tornado in Inanda in KZN yesterday and its surrounding areas. And of course, the next question also, after the officials are able to tally how many people have possibly passed away, how many have been injured and have found those who are missing, hopefully, there's also the question about waterborne diseases that usually become a problem when Mother Nature decides to do what she does.